Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Before You Bet Racing Preview brought to you by PlayUp, where we're going to be looking at all of Saturday's action at Royal Randwick and Moonee Valley. Of course, headlined by the first Group 1 of the Australian racing season, the Group 1 Winx Stakes. I'm your host, Tim Geers, joined as always by Trent Crebbin. And Trent, if spring wasn't in the air last week, it most certainly is this weekend.
Yeah, it's a great day of racing at Royal Randwick. For once, I think you're going to be on the drier deck. I think Melbourne's going to be very wet, so that'll be a tough meeting at Moonee Valley. But the racing at Randwick is absolutely first class.
Yeah, it's a good point you make. And after racing on heavy ground in Sydney for about the last 3 or 4 months, it's good to finally get out on a drying surface. At Randwick, I expect the track to be somewhere in the soft range. It's currently rated a soft 7 with the rail in the true position. There isn't much rain, if any, predicted, but I do think we'll still remain in the soft rating. Be interesting to see how the track plays this week. We've been, I guess, dreaded rail biases and then rail off, and it seems to be a different pattern eventuate every single week, and the pattern changes every single week. So it's kind of tough to get a gauge on, but there's been a couple of meetings at Royal Randwick this year with the rail in the true position, and I suspect that the inside's going to be favoured early. So I'll be looking for those drawn inside and up on speed early in the day, but I think that'll even out later in the day. So be an interesting one to keep an eye on in the early races leading into the day's feature. Over at Moonee Valley in Melbourne, Trent, as you mentioned, there's a stack of rain predicted. The track's currently rated a soft 6. The rail's out 5 metres. There is the chance that could be downgraded to a heavy track. Do you have any kind of thoughts pre-meeting on how the track's going to play with the rail out 5?
Yeah, rain predicted and a lot of rain on the day. I'm absolutely expecting a heavy deck, and it won't be drying out with the rain on the day. Rail out 5 metres. Look, probably on pace a little bit, but a wet Moonee Valley can sometimes be kind of even things out a little bit. So I think, yeah, no disadvantage on speed, but if you're moving on the turn and you can kind of find those better lanes out wide, I think you'll be okay.
Very good. Now, I've had a fresh haircut this week. I feel like a new man. I'm ready to land some best bets. What we'll be doing is taking you through our best bets for Moonee Valley and Randwick, and then we'll be having an in-depth look at the Group 1 Winx Stakes. We'll go through the speed map in the race, the likely tempo, and comment on most of the main chances throughout the race, and we'll give you our selections for the Group 1. Now, if you want a rundown of the Group 1, head to beforeyoubet.com.au. I've put up a comprehensive preview detailing all the speed comments and comments on every single runner in Saturday's Group 1. So head to Before You Bet. You'll find the 2020 Winx Stakes preview and betting tips article. Make sure you check that out if you need any information on any of the runners. Trent, we're going to kick off things with you over in Melbourne at Moonee Valley. Your best bet of the day comes up in the very last event. Race 9, number 3, Order of the Garter, $4.40 with PlayUp. Second up from a spell for Danny O'Brien and Damien Oliver.
Yeah, that sounds like a good combination on paper. And I'm pretty keen on Order of the Garter in the last. My best bet was going to be in the race before, Alpha Oro, but it's been scratched. So I'm happy to be with Order of the Garter here. He's had 2 starts in Australia. Both have been very good runs. Raced about 4 weeks ago, first up, and I thought his run was really solid. It was a really fast race, and he was off a big break. So he couldn't have really been expected to finish off as well as he did. But I thought he ran really well. You look at his overseas form, and it's very, very good, albeit being quite a while ago. He's got a second to Ben Battle, started favourite that day, beat home Mirage Dancer, Caulfield Cup kind of horses there. I think wet ground will be no issue. Ollie's got a slightly tricky draw, but I think the horse has enough speed that it can roll forward. I'd be shocked if they didn't go forward. With only a couple of kind of leader types engaged here, and he'll be able to just sit just off the pace. And I think with that run under his belt, he'll be too strong in the last at a really nice price.
Yeah, it's a fascinating preparation, as we see with a lot of these, overseas imports. He was first up from 96 weeks off at Flemington first up, 96 weeks. And he was $5 into $4.20. So he was heavily backed, carrying 60.5 kilos. It's something you don't see often in Australian racing, especially horses first up off that kind of break. So you'd think he would improve. His only second up start was a 3.8 length victory over in Ireland. That was some time ago. Obviously, we're going back to 2017 now. But you'd think the step up in distance would suit this horse, given, he was contesting Group 1s over 2,400 metres in Europe. You kind of agree with all that, obviously?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah. The 2,000 meters looks good. I think, 2,000 to 2,400 is his range there. There's a few horses that have chances as well. I will make a quick note that I think number 8, Miramar, if the leaders are winning all the first few races, I'll probably have a saver on him just because I think he gets control of the race and likes a wet deck. So he's probably the danger for me. But I think, Order of the Garter second up is going to take a lot of benefit from that run and should be too strong.
Moving on to your best value bet of the day, and you're getting stuck in early. Race number 2, horse number 1, Santa Catarina. Currently a $10 chance with PlayUp. You're opposing the $1.60 favourite, Taylor. Take us through your thoughts there.
Yeah, Talia, obviously very hard to beat coming down from Sydney. You've probably got a better handle on her than I do, but she's racing really consistently, had a bit of a hype on her. Her last start run was obviously very good. It was the 3.8 length win, I think it was. That race was over after 200 meters because every other jockey just gave her the easy lead and it was no betting from there. I think I could have won her after the furlong. So while she's a deserved favourite, the $1.60 kind of quote looks probably just a touch skinny. If you did get even money or something on the day, I'd be pretty keen. But my best value is going to be number 1, Santa Catarina, who is second up here, a New Zealand horse. I think she's a big chance. She raced at this track and distance a couple of weeks ago. Jumped okay from a wide barrier, but then kind of just drifted back to last. The speed kind of slackened and Campbell Rawiller decided to take off early, made a long run, about an 800-meter sustained run around the outside. And it looked like it was going to pay dividends in the straight. She was kicking clear, a head full of steam, but just kind of gave out that last 100 meters first up, making that long run. So I think she's going to be better second up. Draws better here in barrier 4, so I think she can settle a little bit closer. And I think just the heavy track form in New Zealand is really good. She's had, really good runs in Group 3 races in New Zealand on heavy ground, and she didn't quite get that last start. So I think a few of these are going to maybe struggle on the heavy ground. Talia probably handles it quite well, but I think Santa Catarina second up here can give her a real fright. So if there's anything wrong with the favourite, I think she's the one.
Looks third up on my form guide, and she's won 3 of her 4 starts third up from a spell leading into today. Obviously, her first up run was over in New Zealand, followed by her last start at Moonee Valley.
Correct. Yeah.
3 from 4, third up from a spell is obviously a very promising sign for Santa Catarina. We'll just touch on Talia. Obviously, I've seen her a lot racing in Sydney in this preparation. She's won 3 of her 4 career starts. The day she got beat, you can pretty well forget about that because she was caught 3 wide, no cover. On a day where you really had to be leading on the rail on the Kensington track. It was just a leader's highway that day, and she was caught wide off the track throughout as the $1.75 favourite. What I will say about her win last start was, as you alluded to, the race was over within 200 metres because, again, it was a day that you needed to be up on speed, and she found an easy lead within 200 metres of the race, and betting was basically, betting was off as soon as she found the lead as cosily as she did on a day that was playing to front runners. So it was no surprise to see her kick away by 3 or 4 lengths there. The map is probably in her favour here at Moonee Valley. She should jump straight to the front again. And as you've said, her heavy ground form is obviously very good. The only query is taking, $1.60 about a horse having its first start, the Melbourne way of going, and particularly at Moonee Valley, which can be a difficult track, especially for young and inexperienced horses. So it'll be a fascinating race. Looking forward to seeing what Talia can do, and looking forward to having something on Santa Catarina at $10 with PlayUp. We'll move over to Sydney now and focus on my best bets of the day, and I'm going a little bit heavy this week. I'm doing something which I don't normally do, but I'm going to go for one at decent odds here for my best bet of the day. It's race 8, horse number 8, Poetic Charmer. It's currently a $6.50 chance with PlayUp. As I've said, I normally don't get this ambitious with my best bets of the day, but I just think this horse finds a really suitable race. We've got a couple of horses resuming here who have high profiles in the form of number 10, Just Thinkin', and more so number 11, Canaan. Canaan, obviously, last time we saw it, went down as the very, very firm favourite in the Group 3 Gunsing Classic over in Brisbane. Resumes today first up at 1,400 metres, and I think that's somewhat of a query, especially with barrier 12. We often see Waller runners drawn wide. They go back in the field. This will be no different with Canane. He'll be well back in the field from barrier 12, and whether he's going to be sharp enough and forward enough, first up on a soft deck, 1,400 metres coming from back in the field, is a query for mine. So I've gone with the race fit and in-form horse number 8, Poetic Charmer, who's had 3 starts this preparation. He's won 2 of those. He ran third on the other occasion when he didn't get any luck in the final furlong. He actually lodged a protest against the second horse on that occasion for interference, was unsuccessful. But he was still only beaten 1.3 lengths on that occasion by In and Up. Now, In and Up came out and won its next start, so the form has stacked up out of that race. And as I said, Poetic Charmer then came out of that race and won last start over 1,300 metres at Rosehill. Goes very well on wet ground, obviously. It's had 3 starts on wet ground this prep for 2 wins and a 3rd placing. It goes well at Randwick. It won here at Randwick first up from a spell. It's won twice over this distance before, and I just think this horse is in career best form. If you look back through its other previous preparations, the form doesn't compare to what kind of form it's in this preparation. He gets Tommy Berry sticking aboard after Tommy piloted him to victory last start. Tommy's the most informed rider in Sydney at the moment. I think I posted yesterday. He's won something like 15 or 16 of his last 40-odd rides, operating at around 35% or so. So you won't find a better rider in Sydney at the moment than Tommy Berry. He gets a good enough draw in barrier 7. I'm hoping he can sit midfield ahead of the likes of Canane and have a few lengths head start. I just think each way all day at around $6.50, you'll get $2.50 or so to place. And with a few queries about those ahead of him in the market, I think that he's a really good each way bet at around that $6.50 mark. Trent, any thoughts on the likes of Canane or Just Thinking or any other horse in that race?
I thought Canane looked quite short. Just first up for Waller, drawn wide. It just doesn't. It's not a setup that normally goes well. They'll just go back to last and just hit the line nicely, I think, even though he's a pretty handy horse. Just Thinking, yeah, not sure again first up. But yeah, I think Poetic Charmer's the fit horse on speed. In midfield, racing consistently, handles heavy going. Just Tommy Berry, like you said, is absolutely flying. So I think, yeah, it's a really good each way play.
And he's a bit similar to the horse I threw out last week in Charatera. And these Snowden horses, and they're often in these red colours of the Snowdens, and they often, when they find this kind of form, just keep their form and just keep turning up and plugging away in these sorts of races and aren't far away. So I think now that he's found this form, I'm very confident that he'll keep it. And as I said, around $6.50, probably get $2.50 for the place. You can have a 1/3 each way bet, and I think that's the best way to go on what looks a tricky card overall at Randwick. We'll move on to my best value bet of the day, and I'm going to go to race number 3, and I'm going to back 2 horses here. We've obviously got the favourite, New King, who's hovering around the $3.50 mark, but I'm going to oppose him today. I was on him last start, but I thought he got every possible hope in the way the race was run and his position in the run. It was a good win, and he's open to more improvement. It won't shock me if he does win, but I think $3.50 is the bottom price. I'm going to side with 2 horses. First is number 11, This Is So, at $6.50. And the second of those is number 4, Cart Fever, at $16. This Is So comes off a last start victory, which tormented me because I'd backed him 2 starts ago when he didn't run well at all at Canterbury. And then I jumped off him last start again at Canterbury. And, of course, he sat 3 wide the trip and beat my selection, bar none. Which was my best bet of the day. So just to bring up a little bit of torture. But I thought it was a really good performance from This Is So. He obviously just probably needed a couple of runs back from a spell because Tommy Berry jumped on for Jean Van Overmeer and he got the job done. The important part about that is that Anthony Cummins has a really good record at Royal Randwick. His runners seem to go very well here. Obviously, this is where he trains from, so that makes sense. But the fact that This Is So could win at Canterbury last start, with the way that he had to go throughout that race, I think he's going to improve again here back to his home deck of Randwick. He's 2 out of 2 on soft ground. He draws much better today in barrier 4. Tommy Berry, I've already said, is the most informed jockey in Sydney at the moment. And I just think at $6.50, $7, he's a terrific bet in this race. The other one is number 4, Cart Fever. He's also had 2 starts back from a spell. He's a horse that historically, if you look at his record, he always needs 1 or 2 runs back from a spell. He's had 10 starts first or second up, and he's only ever placed once. But if you look at his third up record, he's had 4 starts for a win and 3 minor placings. So this is when he'll start to peak. I'm confident with those 2 runs under the belt, he is going to show improvement today, third up from a spell. And he was only beaten half a length last start at Warwick Farm. So all signs point towards him running particularly well today. Rachel King takes over from the apprentice Chris Williams, who rode him last start at Warwick Farm. He has won at this track before. He's got a good record at this distance. And as I said, I think third up from a spell, this is the time to get on him. And he's currently hovering around the $16 mark. He draws well in barrier 6 as well, so he should get every possible chance from there. So I'm going to oppose New King. Those are my 2 plays for the race. This is So, number 11. He's currently $6.50. And number 4, Cart Fever. He's currently around $16. With PlayUp, that's my best value of the day. Trent, we're going to get into the main race of the day now, the Group 1 Winx Stakes. This is race number 7 on the card, over 1,400 metres. Other than probably last year's Queen Elizabeth Stakes, I can't remember a Group 1 field as good as this for quite a while.
Yeah, it's a hot race, and I think you won't see this kind of field of quality, like the depth of quality in this race for quite a while, just because it's a kickoff point for a lot of these horses, which does make it tough, of course, with so many stars first up. You're not sure quite where they're at, and a few maybe that are trying to look and steal a Group 1 early before it gets a little bit tougher later. So we'll kick into it. And what do you like in the race?
Well, I ummed and ahed like most people, I'm sure. Probably a good segue to direct our viewers to beforeyoubet.com.au. If you want a full runner-by-runner preview for the Group 1 Winx Stakes, head to Before You Bet. You can find the 2020 Winx Stakes preview and betting tips, where I have listed my comments on every single runner in the race and provided my selections. I guess a good point to start is the speed map and the tempo of this race. We were just chatting a little bit off air about it, but we'll quickly go through it. The way I see it in my speed map, I think Quackerjack will come across from barrier 14 and take up the lead. Dreamforce is drawn to his outside in barrier 16. I think he'll slide across and sit outside the leader. I expect the 2 Waterhouse runners to be right up there on speed, those being Conti Patiro, drawn barrier 2, and the First Emergency Wolf. He draws barrier 9, and I think he'll be able to come across and probably land 1 out, 1 back if they want to ride him forward with the blinkers back on first up. I think Flit will sit prominently on the rail midfield, probably around 5th in the run. The stable of said Melody Bell will be ridden further forward than what we saw first up, when she was just completely snicked and ridden cold. But I expect to see her midfield at worst today from barrier 6. The one I think could be posted is horse number 11, Brandenburg. He's first up from a spell. He's a go-forward horse, but from barrier 12, I can't really find a position for him in the run. Unless they really run this along at a good tempo and the field kind of breaks up a bit, I think Brandenburg is at risk of being posted 3 wide the trip. Fierce Impact and the Bostonian, they'll tuck in somewhere in midfield. Bostonian drawn barrier 1. He'll end up midfield the rail. Fierce Impact drawn barrier 4. He'll be somewhere thereabouts. And then we get back to these 4 Waller horses. Very elegant. They're not going to bustle her forward first up from a spell. She'll go back. And the other 3 are all drawn wide, those being Star of the Seas, Imaging, and Colding. General rule of thumb with Waller runners is drawn wide, go back. So they'll be towards the back of the field. Avilius is a back marker. Nicanova is a back marker. And then we're left with the favourite, Master of Wine. Now, I've got him on my map from barrier 11, worse than midfield. Probably 1 off the rail with cover. Do you agree with that, Trent, or have you seen it differently at all?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. We were just chatting before that Brandenburg could be the one at a disadvantage there. I'm very interested to see what they do with Wolf at 1,400 meters, whether he leads. Either Dreamforce or Quackerjack leads, whichever one wants to cross, and find the rail probably does. Master of Wine, like you said, I think they go back a fair way. I think it'll be worse than midfield, definitely.
Yeah, and the thing to keep in mind with a lot of these horses is, A, they're first up, And B, they've got much bigger targets in mind further down the spring. You know, Master of Wine, we're talking about a horse that's going to compete in the Cox Plate, Caulfield Cup sort of races. They're not going to want to risk this horse being caught 3 wide, gutbuster, soft track, first up from a spell over 1,400 metres. So I think in most cases with these horses, particularly drawn wide, they'll be conservative. Overall, I think it'll be a good tempo, but I don't think it's going to be a run at a crazy pace. But I don't think it's going to be run at a crawl. You know, the Waterhouse runners alone will make sure it's not run at a crawl, but also the horses drawn wide in Quackerjack and Dreamforce. Generally, if there's speed drawn wide and have to come across, that sets up a decent early tempo. So overall, I've got it running at a moderate speed, not too quick, but also not at a crawl. I think every horse will probably get their chance, provided the track is playing fairly, which is also, something that's definitely worth consideration. In terms of my selections, we won't go through every runner on here. As I said, you can check out the article on Before You Bet if you want comments on every single runner. I narrowed it down to about 5 chances, which was difficult to do. And I've left out a few of the big names. On top for me is number 4, Fierce Impact. He's at around $16 with Palmerbet. And I think he's just a good kind of each way price. It was about this time last year where this horse really kind of came into his own. He's gone to a new level. He ran second beaten a nose this time last year over this track and distance on soft ground. And then he went to Melbourne and won back-to-back Group 1s over the mile. Then last preparation, he returned with a 0.3 length second in a Group 1 in Melbourne. He then came to Sydney, ran third in the Group 1 Chipping Norton Stakes over the mile at Randwick. I think soft ground's his go. I think from memory, he's had 4 starts on soft ground for 2 wins and 2 second placings. So that's ideal. And I think he's probably one of the horses in the field best suited first up at 1,400 metres, as opposed to the likes of Master of Wine, very elegant, horses like that who are probably going to be better suited over further. I think first up 1,400 metres is a tick for this horse, tackling this sort of company. I think this is the best chance he's going to get. Barrier 4, lovely trail midfield somewhere. And as I said, I just think he's a good each way bet at $16. The other horse that I'll be backing, and the money is already coming for it, is number 2, the Bostonian. He has just got a freakish first up record with 6 wins from 7 starts, first up from a spell. It's just outstanding. He bounced back to form big time last preparation. He only had 2 starts, but those 2 starts bred a Group 1 win and a Group 1 second placing beaten 0.2 lengths. The query is the Group 1 he won last preparation, the Canterbury Stakes, was probably a second tier Group 1. I mean, he beat the likes of Savatiano and Mr. Seawolf on that occasion. I would argue they're not elite level Group 1 talent such as he faces today. This is a bloody red hot field. But he did then split Dreamforce and Tia Cow Shark second up last prep, which is more like the elite Group 1 form I was just referencing. So the wet ground will play into his favour. He has 7 wins from 12 starts on the wet ground. But the other thing that I've considered with this horse is the fact that there's a jockey change, in that last prep he was ridden by, I think, Nashra Willer and James McDonald. He's now ridden by Jay Ford today, which is a negative jockey change. But Barrier 1, he'll sit midfield the rails. And as I've just mentioned with Fierce Impact, I think this is the time the Bostonian will get his chance. First up 1,400 metres, which is when he goes best, taking on these other horses in the race. So they're the top 2 for me, the Bostonian and Fierce Impact. The other 3 I had in my top 5 were Master of Wine, the favourite, obviously, Brandenburg, resuming from a spell, the 4-year-old in the race, and Dreamforce, number 1, who I think you're pretty keen on, Trent. So I'll handball that over to you so you can chat a little bit about Dreamforce.
Yeah, I had something on Dreamforce all in at $14. So he's now into around that $7 range. So that's probably some good shopping early on my part. I think he'll cross and either lead or sit outside. Who is it there? Quackerjack. Quackerjack,
yeah.
And yeah, I think first up is kind of like with the Bostonian. I think this is his chance to get his Group 1. We'll get another Group 1 when some of these stars are just kind of first up and have got bigger targets. I didn't think he'd want a proper heavy track, but I don't think he's going to get that. It's like a soft 7 now drying out. So I think that's fine for him. He's got a good first up record. He loves the 1400 meters. He's beaten the Bostonian before as well. Maybe the Bostonian is better fresh. But I think he just a lot of sets up for him. He can roll across the front. First up, yes. Soft ground, yes. It all points to him running really well on pace, especially if the leaders are suited during the day. I think if the leaders are suited during the day, I think he's going to start favourite and be very hard to beat. If it's playing fairly, I still think he's a really good each way chance, and you could definitely do worse than have something on Dreamforce.
Yeah, it's funny you said that all signs kind of point to him running well, because that's basically the same comment that I've written in my preview, is that all of his stats for this race point to him being super competitive. I mean, he has 5 wins and 3 seconds from 14 starts at Randwick. So 8 top 2 finishes from 14 starts at the track. He's only ever missed a place twice from 12 starts at the distance. I think he goes better on good ground, but he has finished in the top 2 at 6 of his 7 starts on soft ground. So soft ground should be suitable enough for him. He's only missed the money twice from 10 starts when first up from a spell. So all the stats for this horse just line up to him running well. And I actually think despite the wide draw, he should get across fairly comfortably with Quackerjack and probably get to decent run throughout the race. Let's talk a little bit about this favourite. Number 7, Master of Wine. He is right up there in betting markets for the Caulfield Cup, the Cox Plate, and the Melbourne Cup. He absolutely belted them first up last preparation by about 3.5 lengths over this distance. But that was in a much lower rating race. He's only had 1 start in Group 1 company. That was the Queen Elizabeth Stakes last preparation, where he ran 4th. I thought that was a really super effort, because the Queen Elizabeth Stakes, you don't get form lines much stronger for Group 1 races in Australia than that race. He had the likes of a Dabe, Very Elegant, and Danon Premium, who ran the top 3. He ran 4th in just his 2nd start in Group Company and his 1st start in Group 1 Company at weight for age in probably the best race in Australia that year. So I thought it was a really good effort. First up at 1,400 metres, how do you kind of assess him in this race?
Yeah, I think he could just be a freak and come out and just win this and go undefeated for the whole prep. And, you just look back and go, wow, that was just such an easy bet to have. But I think I'm going to be against him here today. I think, yeah, just the wide draw, 1,400 metres, just the one quiet trial as well. It was a good trial, but it wasn't something that suggests that he's going to absolutely blow them away here. And you've also just got to think as well, he doesn't want to win a Group 1 here, suddenly cop, 1-2 kilo penalties for his Caulfield Cup target, which I think is going to be his race this year. I think he's going to be very hard to beat in that. So that's just kind of another quite, sort of knock on him on Saturday. I don't think I can back him on Saturday in the Winx Stakes, but I think if he comes out and wins, you just cop it and say, well, he's just too good.
Yeah, and his trials have been fair. What I will say is he hasn't had the blinkers on in his trials. He will wear the blinkers for race day. So from all reports, he's kind of a different horse with the shades on. I'm a bit in your corner. I almost don't know what to do with him. I can't have him on top, but he's currently sitting at $6.50. If he was to drift out to something like $10 on the fair, or even $10 fixed odds, I mean, on one hand, it'd probably be a good indication that he's not ready first up. But on the other hand, I almost don't want to let him go around, because I'm just so terrified of him. He could, as you said, come out and blow this field away. He could just be a legit star. But on the other hand, with a more conservative view, he's got much bigger, grand finals further down the track, and I doubt they're going to be wanting to give this horse a real gut buster first up, trying to win a 1,400 metre, Group 1. So I think he's a little bit of a false favourite at the moment. As I said, I do very much respect that form line from last year's Queen Elizabeth Stakes, but first up in a red hot Group 1 field, 1,400 metres, drawn a little bit wide. I would be surprised if they had him tuned up ready to win this. Let's talk about another one in the likes of Very Elegant, Melody Bell. There are a couple of others kind of hovering around the $8 to $10 mark. How do you assess their chances? Very Elegant, obviously, first up from a spell, 1 quiet trial under the belt, and Melody Bell ran last in the Missile Stakes first up.
I'll start with Very Elegant. I think she'll go back from the draw as well. And just kind of reading through the lines, between the lines there from Waller, I don't think she's tuned up at all. Having said that, she's a very good horse. She's probably the best credentialed middle distance horse that we've really got in Australia at the moment. You know, the one that's been there and done that. I think she's going on a Cups path, like Melbourne Cup path, which I think is a bit interesting for her. She's going to get a big weight, but yeah, I think she's probably one you can risk. But again, she'll be running very well. Melody Bell, before her first up run in the Missile Stakes, I was very keen that she was going to be the one to win this race second up. There were it was a forgive run, I guess. You know, she got back. 1,200 meters isn't her go, and she obviously improves a lot second up. But I wanted to see more from that first up run, you know, despite those knocks. So I think I do have a ticket going for her. So if she gets up, I'll be happy. But I wanted to see more from that first up run from Melody Bell.
Yeah, I'm with you. Firstly, on Very Elegant, I think she's like a poisonous price at $7.50. I don't know how she's single figures. Don't think she starts single figures. Yeah, she's a very good horse, and you know, have to respect her, especially on wet ground. She has 7 wins and 3 second placings from 12 starts on wet surfaces, but she's never won from 4 starts first up from a spell. Like, she's going to go back from the barrier, be ridden cold. There's no chance that she'll be set for this first up 1,400 with 1 quiet trial under the belt. I think she starts double figures. Don't think she's a winning chance at all. Melody Bell, jury's out after that first up run. But what I will say is that she had no mathematical chance to win that race first up from where she positioned. Yes, it was a small field of 6, but that was a day where you had to be right up on speed at Randwick. Nothing was making ground throughout the day. She was heavily snicked from the start, settled last, and just was given absolutely no hope. But I'm with you. I think she was a little bit plain on first look, but I wouldn't necessarily be dropping off her yet. But the jury is certainly out, as I've just said. Yeah, she's a tough one to kind of assess. She has had 4 starts at Randwick as well and has never run a place, but she has had 5 starts at the distance, 7 starts at the distance for 5 wins. Obviously, soft ground helps her as well. So I haven't included her in my kind of top 4 or 5, but we'll get a good gauge on where she is with this start, because the stable have said they're going to ride her forward from barrier 6. They're going to put her in the race. So the intent is already there for them to win this race. So if she comes out and fails, she could be Gonski, but I would expect some pretty sharp improvement from her. Are there any runners in the race that we may have missed that you're keen on, Trent?
I think that kind of covers most of them. There's a few you're kind of hoping to get back into form. Like, we haven't even touched on Avilius, who was considered pretty much the best horse in Australia a while ago. Last prep was disappointing, albeit, you know, he still ran okay in good races. Off his SPs from last preparation, you know, he's starting $3-4 in Group 1 races, and now he's $34 here. Seems a bit crazy, but you don't really know how well he's going. I also kind of hope First Emergency Zabrowski gets a run. He's not a chance to win here, I wouldn't have thought, but he took a lot, took a lot of steps last preparation. I'm kind of see where he goes this prep. Maybe a Caulfield Cup. I'd like to see him run.
Yeah, it's a huge ask for him. First up, like tackling weight for age Group 1 against some elite horses, given he's so lightly raced, and you know, the only Group 1 is contested with the Australian Derby against his own age group. So it will be interesting to see how he lines up. He's definitely a horse to follow. I agree with you, but first up, weight for age Group 1 against some of these horses, you couldn't have him. Avilius is completely gone, I think. The only other interesting one is number 5, Colding, who'll be the last horse I'll touch on. Just absolutely didn't come up last preparation, ran nowhere in Melbourne, but Waller's come out and said, like, this horse is a different horse in Sydney. I think they're being too harsh on the way he ran in Melbourne. His Sydney form is very good. How do you kind of assess his chances? Because at his best and his best Sydney form, he would be right in this race up to his ears.
Yeah, I don't really know what to do with Colding. Sydney form again is good. You know, he was the star of, what was it, the autumn last year in the Epsom, knocking off Tiago Shark, and just all the form around him kept stacking up over and over.
Yeah, the Epsom and then the Golden Eagle.
Yep, knocking off Arcadia Queen. Let's not talk about that. So yeah, I think drawn wide again here. I think Waller was quite actually, you know, thought he was a big chance. Aussie booked it right. I don't know. He's not the worst, but I'd like to see him do it again before you kind of get piled into him.
Yep, I agree. Okay, so quick sum up of the Group 1 Winx Stakes. I'm in the corner of Fierce Impact at $16 and the Bostonian at around $6.50, $7. Look, it's a race where you could back 4 or 5 horses. The market is just so wide open. So if you do like something, I wouldn't discourage you from backing it. But for me, yep, Fierce Impact and the Bostonian. Trent, how are you going to kind of play this race?
I don't think I'm gonna have another bet. I'm just gonna stick with my all-in Dreamforce ticket and just cheer that home. Otherwise, it's just a watch and kind of appreciate race for me. But yeah, otherwise Dreamforce cheering him home.
And the good news is my first selection at Taree, Sharpay Ruler, just got the bobbin on the line, drifted out to $3.70. So we built the bank a little bit leading into Saturday's racing. Guys, jump on beforeyoubet.com.au. You can find all of our race-by-race coverage, our previews, our tips, our best bets for Moonee Valley from Trent and from Randwick from me. You can jump on and find my runner-by-runner preview of the Group 1 Winx Stakes. It's all happening. We've got you covered for everything. It's all on beforeyoubet.com.au. Make sure if you are having a bet this weekend, you do so responsibly. Thanks to PlayUp for supporting the show as always. Trent, any last comments heading into what's going to be a mouth-watering day of racing tomorrow?
No, I can't wait to get stuck into it and watch the races. And we'll talk to you next week.
Yep, all the best, mate. Thanks, guys. That's us for this week. Make sure you join us again next week on the Before You Bet Racing Preview. Good luck.